This conference will now be recorded.
Yeah, in today's session, we're going to discuss about exception handling. Before going to exception handling, you should know what is error and what is an exception. Errors, for example, if you are writing 50 lines of code, in the 50 line of code, some error has occurred. It will stop the program execution. Okay, it will stop the program execution. That is nothing but a error. On the another hand, you can say exceptions. Exceptions are raised due to some internal events. You can say that will going to change your normal flow of a program. That is nothing but your exceptions. Like for example, if you are dividing some value with zero, okay, in the data side, you are not aware what you will not be aware at what time you're going to get the denominator zero. Okay, if you are getting the denominator zero, definitely you'll going to it's going to change your normal flow of a program, as well as it's going to throw an exception. Okay, some when some internal events occur or some external events might be, exception will be thrown. We're going to see there are two types. Before going to exception, I will say what's the error. If any error occurred, what will happen? It will going to stop the execution, program execution. There are two types of errors. One is syntax error and logical error. Okay, if you are not following the proper syntax, definitely we're going to throw the syntax error. For in this code, can you say what is syntax error? I have amount equal 1000. If amount greater than 2999, and then I'm printing the values, you are eligible to purchase a TSA self phase. In this block of code, which line of code you have the syntax error? Yeah, you can able to see the line number 2 in if statement. There is no colon. There is no colon in Python. You have to use a colon after the if statement. If you're not proper using the proper syntax, okay, if you're not following the proper syntax, definitely it's going to throw the syntax error. Okay, it's come under the error section. Now you can able to see the error message. I got the error as syntax error. It's invalid syntax because in if statement I have to use colon. Okay, next one is logical errors. Okay, logical errors nothing but exceptions. Okay, for example, I already said to you, for example, if you want to concatenate two string values, instead of concatenating two strings, you are concatenating one int with one string. What happens? It is going to throw an exception. I'm going to say like, for example, we are concatenating 12 with some hello. It's going to throw exception. Okay, and then if you divide some value with 0, for example, if you divide some value with 0, 2 3 4 divided by 0, it's going to throw some exception. Okay, that is nothing but a logical error. It will happen mostly in the runtime, but syntax error will happen in the compile time. Keep in mind, syntax error will happen the compile time. This name they will called as checked exceptions. It will happen in the during compile time will happen. That is called checked exceptions. Okay, the logical errors are called the unchecked exception. Mostly occurs during the runtime. Once you run the program, then only you know the exception, right? That is when in the runtime error that occurs after passing syntax. Though your syntax correct, but logically your program will throw an exception. For example, I can say if you divide by number by 0, then what kind of error will throw? Zero divisible error will throw. Okay, because you can't divide a number by 0. Okay, if you divide 0, it will give an infinity. That's why the making a 0 division error is raised. Okay, you want to handle this kind of logical errors during runtime. That's why the exception handling comes into picture. If you run few part of a code during runtime, okay, during runtime what will happen? If a condition is not met, your code might get fail. The remaining part of code will not run if you are not handling the proper exception handling. For example, I can say I have written like 25 lines of code. 25 lines of code. What will happen in the 15th line of code, due to some exception, due to some exception, due to some exception, what will happen? The remaining 16 to 25 lines of code will not be executed. Will not be executed. It will abruptly stop the normal flow of your execution. In order to avoid this, because see, total 25 lines I have, 15th line of code, due to some exception, it can be any exception, okay, arithmetic exception, or it can be a type error, any kind of error exceptions, it's getting failed. The remaining 16 25 lines of code will not be executed. In order to avoid this, I want to handle the exception. I want to handle the exception for your code. That is nothing but a exception handling. Okay. Now we can able to see the Python exception handling. In Python exception handling, we can able to handle the runtime exceptions. When you start running the program, what will happens? There may be several possibilities to get the exceptions. If you handle all those exceptions, definitely it's not going to change the normal flow of your program. It's not going to change the normal flow of program. If you're not using exception handling, definitely it's going to change your normal flow of program. Definitely your program appropriately going to stop wherever you're getting wherever you got the exception. Okay, the remaining line of code will not be executed. Now we're going to see different types of exceptions in Python. First one is syntax error. Syntax error is checked exception or unchecked exception. Checked exception happens on the compile time. Okay, unchecked exception will answer runtime. Okay, now I have made the syntax error. Syntax error I already said to you, if I used a semicolon or misspelled keywords or unbalanced parenthesis, I will get what kind of error? Syntax error. What happens whenever typing some code in the IDE, your interpreter will encounter the syntax error. Your interpreter will encounter syntax error. It can be misspelled keyword or missing semicolon or unbalanced parenthesis called syntax error. Next one is type error. Type error means, for example, if you are concatenating string with integer or int with float, definitely what error will get? Type error. You can concatenate with the same type. If you concatenate with different types, definitely will get the type error. Okay. Next one is name error. The name error of wait, I'll go to the wait. The name error will happen if the for example, I'm using one function. Okay, in the function I'm using one variable. That variable can be within the scope of the function. If you try to access that function from outside of your if you try to access a variable from the outside function, definitely it's going to be throw as name error. Okay, that's what mentioned is the exception is raised when variable or function name is not found in the current scope. Okay, now for I can show the name error for you here. I will take any examples. Yeah, new and then py file. Sorry, instead of putting py file, I want to create the directory as exception handling. Exception handling. In the exception handling, we're going to create a py file exception 01 exception 01. I'm going to write one function. I'm going to write function like this. Okay, def func of 01. I'm going to use print statement and statement like I'm going to print something like hello. Okay, and then I'm going to have some variables. is equal to 30 is equal to 30. Okay, now I am trying to print the values of x, value of x. Okay, what are we seeing right now? We are seeing the name error. See, this variable can be used inside the scope of this function. You can't able to access the value of x outside the scope. If you are trying to use the value of x outside the scope, I'm getting what error? Name error. Not only variables. If you are trying to access a function from outside the scope, definitely it will throw the name error. Okay. Fourth one is index error. Now you're going to say, I'm going to have one list 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Just listen carefully. You're going to say the index error 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. In the list, I'm going to have the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I will keep like this. List equal to 1, comma 2, comma 3, comma 4, comma 5. If you try to access a value of, if you try to access a value of list, son, what will happen? What type of expression will throw? See, I have only the 5 values in the list, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. If I try to access a list of 7, definitely it is going to throw the index error. Okay, the exception is raised when the index is out of range for a list, a tuple, or other sequence types. Now I can able to access only within the ranges. If I try to access outside the ranges, definitely it is going to throw the index error. Okay, see the remaining types, we will see it later. Okay, now we'll see some examples how to handle this syntax error, type error, and name error, and index error. As of now, we'll see these 4 exceptions. We'll see these 4 exceptions. Okay, and then how to handle these exceptions you're going to see now. For that, what I'm going to show, how to handle the exceptions. If you want to handle the exceptions, you have to use the try and except block. In Java, we can use try and catch block, but Python, you have to use try and except means exception block. Okay. Now, if you are writing some few piece of code, you know this code might throw an exception. That code alone you have to put in try block. Okay, you if you're writing some code, you know this part of code is going to throw some exception. That part of code you have to put in try block, and then you already know some familiar exceptions. You can handle the exception in the exception block. Okay, there are 2 blocks are available: try block, except block, and except block. In try block, whichever code is going to throw an exception, you want to put into the try block, and then whichever exception you want to handle, you can use in the exception block. Exception block only to handle these exceptions. Handle the exceptions. Now I'm going to copy this code. I'm going to copy this code. Just going to paste it here. I'm going to remove this try and except block. Now you're going to say what kind of exception is going to throw. What kind of exception? What's the exception name? And you have to say, this code, very simple code. What kind of exception name? If you are trying to numerator 10 divided by 0, it's going to give some exception. The exception name is going to be 0 divisible error, right? Exception name is 0 divisible error. If you want see 0 divisible error getting, it's not printing the result, as well as it's not printing the statement. If I want to print the statement, what I have to do? Which code I want to put in try block? In except block, what exception I want to handle? See here, if I run this code, this line is not printing because I have totally 8 lines. Okay, I have 8 lines. In the fourth line, I'm facing some exception. Sixth line is also not printing, and the eighth line also not printing. Okay, the remaining line of code is not executed. This line of code is not executed. If I want to execute all the lines of code, definitely I want to go for the exception handling. Okay, the below line of code is not executed. You can see below line of code is not executed. It's not executed. Can you able to see the message? Can you able
Yes.
to see the message in the console? No. Can you able to see the message in the console? You're not able to see. Error. No, can't able to see because in this line 4 you're getting some exception because 10 divided by 0 you're getting some exception. If, for example, you already know this line of code is going to throw some exception in future. Okay, now what I have to do? I want to put this line of code, not this line of code, only this line of code in try block. Whichever code it's going to throw the exception, you want to put in try block, and then except block you have to use. 1 minute, I have not given the proper indentation. Yeah, and then you have to use the except block. What exception name? Exception name is
Zero division error.
zero division error. That's it. Okay. Now if you run the script, whether my 10th line, 11th line, and 12th line will execute, you're going to say if I handle the exception, right? Now
Okay.
if you run the script, okay, 1 minute, 1 minute, print result is coming, right? Okay, let it be 1 minute. Yeah, I want to made a mistake over here. The print statement. Okay, and then you can put this thing in exception block. What will happen? See, if you're getting exception, then only this line of code will be executed. Okay, if you're getting exception, it will handle your exception and then print the error denominator cannot be 0. See, now I'm going to debug this line of code. Just go to debug. Okay, just debug, and then you can use step over. In this line 5, you're going to get this exception. Directly it's coming to the 7th line, and then in 7th line, I'm handling the exception, zero division error. Just give step over. Now it's going to print the denominator cannot be 0. This is how you can able to handle your exceptions. Handle your exceptions. Now I'm going to have some value z equal to 88, and then I'm going to have the print statement, like I'm going to print the value z. Let's see. Now what happened? Why it is printing now? Why 88 is printing now? Because I handled the exception. I handle the exception. It's running the remaining part of code. If you are not handling the exception, definitely what will happen? 88th line will not execute. Sorry, 10th line will not execute, as well as it won't print the value of 88. In order to execute the remaining lines of code, definitely you have to handle the exception handling. Whichever code is going to have an exception, you have to put in try block, and then in except block you have to handle the exception. Okay, then only the remaining line of code will be executed. Otherwise, you will going to stop the normal flow of execution. Now I'm going to show a few more examples. Okay, yeah, this is a way of catching a specific exception. Catching a specific exception. Now, I'm having a question to you. If you don't know the exception name, you don't know what exception is going to occur. You don't know what exception is going to occur. Wait, hold on, exception. On exception. Yeah, you don't know what exception is going to come. The exception is going to parent for all the exception types. Who is the parent? For all these exception types, who is a parent? Syntax error, type error, name error, index error, key error, value error, attribute error, IO error, zero division error, import error. For all these exceptions, who is a parent?
Exception
Exception
agent.
is a parent. If you don't know what exception is going to throw, definitely can put exception. It will handle all the exception. If a parent know all these things, even it can able to she can able to handle all the things, right? He or she can able to handle all the things. That's what I'm giving exception. Now we can able to see the 88 sorry, number it's printing 88. The rest of the line code is 0 because I handle the exception. If you know the exception, you can catch the corresponding exception. If you don't know the name of exception, you can put exception. It will handle all kind of exceptions because this is a parent actually for all the exceptions: index error, value error, attribute error, IO error, zero division error, and import error. Okay. Now we have few more examples. Okay, that's what they mentioned as catching specific exception. Here they mentioned as zero division error and then index error. And then one more thing I have to say, you can handle more than one exceptions. You can have handle more than exception. See, except index error. Okay, I'm printing something. Right. Okay, why it's throwing error? Once it defined the parent in above, you should not put child in the next except block. The exception block will have the you have to put in the last. Okay, that's a mistake I did here. One minute. Yeah, you can put index error, and then you can put you can have more than exceptions. One minute. Indentation issue is there. Why it's showing exception? Except keyword only is there. Yeah, except keyword. Syntax error is an issue. One minute. Okay, okay. I made a blunder mistake. What mistake it is? As per syntax, I have to use colon here. That's the mistake I did here. And then I have to follow the indentation. Yeah. Now it's going to the value error. You can print some messages. And then I can use one more except block. And then I'm going to put the parent exception. And the parent exception. Parent exception. Okay, but you should follow on rules. Exception block should not be placed in first. If you want to catch some specific exceptions, you want to put it first. If you don't know the exception name, then you can able to put in the last as exception. This is going to parent exception for all the exception types. First, what will happen? Numerator denominator, it's going to zero divisible, right? First, will come to the except block. It will not get satisfied. Then it will come to the this another except block. It not satisfied, then it will come to third one. Now it will get satisfied because the exception block will have all kind of exceptions. Okay, if I run the script, what statement will be printed? Can you see? It will print this one or this one or this one. You have to say after dividing this number, you're going to get some exception, right? It's going to print this message or print this
Prince
message.
exception. Parent
What exception?
exception.
Parent exception.
Parent exception.
First we'll go and check for zero divisible error. It's not satisfied. I will go check for zero divisible error. It's not satisfied. Finally, come to exception. Though it's a parent, it will have all exception types. Definitely, it's going to print the parent exception. can see, right? And then rest of code will be executed. This is called the rest of code will be executed. If you handle the exception, rest of code will be executed. If not, the remaining code will not be executed. Now the rest of code is executed because I handled the exception. Okay. Now I am removing this one. Whether my line 15 will execute, 14 and 15 will execute, you have to say whether my line 13 and 14 will execute.
No, it will not execute.
It will not execute because we didn't handle the exception. Okay. If
Yeah.
you run the script, you can see able to see. Okay, you can't able to see the Z88 here. Okay, because it's throwing diesel error because you didn't handle the exception. Okay, if you know the exception name, you can give the corresponding exception because zero diesel error. Sorry, Z is caps, but the syntax actually print number should be number should not be zero. The denominator denom should not be divided by zero. Should not we divide by 0. Okay, these are things you have to, yeah, I made a mistake, right? I want to use double quotes. Yeah, use single quotes over here, shouldn't, so I want to use double quotes. Now it will run this print statement, denominator should not be equal to 0, and then it's going to print the 88. This is how you can able to handle the exceptions. Now you're going to say, if I run this two lines of code, what exception will throw? I have not used any try and catch block. Just remove the try and catch block, try and except block. If I try to run these two lines of code, what exception will throw? It will throw type error or zero decimal error or index error. Okay, key and then you can see like IO error and then import error, value error, key error. I'm asking you, if you run these two lines of code,
Index error.
what what
Index error.
index error? Okay, because 5 is not available here, I definitely it's going to throw the index error. If you don't know the exception name, what you have to do? You have to provide
Exception.
exception
Provide
exception
exception.
exception. You have to provide, that is the parent exception for all the exception types. Now I'm going to show one default case. Default case means till now we have seen only try and except block. Now I'm going to show try with else class. Else is a class actually. Okay. Yeah, for example, in Java, I will say, I will take this thing. In Java we have like same thing. Okay, we have one try block, and then we have one catch block, and then we have one finally block in Java. I'm saying, okay, I'm not confusing you. We have three blocks in Java. One is try, catch, and finally. This finally block will not think about whether you handle the exception or not. Whether you handle the exception, it won't consider. It will execute after catch block. After catch block, it will execute the remaining lines of code in the final block. Remaining lines of code, remaining lines of code in final block. Okay. It won't think whether you handle exception or if you're not handling exception, it won't think about it. Whatever final block it have, it's going to execute this codes. Okay, that's what I mentioned. After the catch block, it will execute the remaining lines of code. It won't consider whether you handle the exception or not. Okay, I'm going to add one more point here. It won't consider. It won't consider whether you handle the exception or not. Okay, that is the use of finally block. Now come to Python. Instead of final block, what class we have? In Java we have finally. Python we have else class. Okay, now you're going to say now, look at this line of code, look at this line of code. When this, when you'll get exception, when you will get exception for this line of code, when it will go to except block, can you say? If you're not able to understand, I'll take our things. New and then py file exception 02, just copy paste. Okay, now I want to provide my input in the console. Okay, I want to pass some numbers, I want to pass some 8. Okay, if I pass 8, what will happen? I can convert into int value, the number is going to int value. Now number is going to 8, and then you are checking the asset condition. If 8 modulo of 2 equal to 0, definitely it's going to give 0 as a reminder, right? 8 will be reminder will be 0, and then definitely yeah, definitely 1 minute, I'll check. Run, enter a number, I'm going to give 8, it's going to give the 0.125 value. I'm asking when it will go to the exception block. Okay, for example, if I run the script, I'm going to give 0, this time I'm going to give 0. Definitely, what error is throwing here?
Zero division error.
It's throwing a zero division error. But what happened here is, 1 minute. Okay, enter number 0. Okay, okay, I didn't handle the exception. Okay, just copy and paste it here. Now you run the same script and put the value 0. Okay, 1 divided by num. Where are you getting one? Okay, yeah, yeah, okay. Yeah, yeah, it's I handle exception and then directly coming to the else block, and then now the num value is sticker 0, and then it's throwing one more exception called 0 division error. Because I handle the exception in the else block, what will happen again? I'm putting 1 divided by 0. The num value passes 0 value, again throwing the one more exception. Now in some situations you might use the else class. Okay, in some situations we might want to run a certain block of code if the block code inside the try runs without any errors. See, in java part, I said to you, in catch block, if you're not able to, in catch block, if you're not able to handle the exception, a final block won't consider, it will execute the remaining lines of code. But here in the else class, what they mentioned here is, if you want to run a certain block of code, okay, if you want to run a certain block of code, if the code block inside try runs without any errors, okay, what they're saying here is, in the try block, if there is no errors, if you want to write some additional logics in the else block, then you can use the else block, will run the rest of lines of code. Okay, I'm going to stop the session right now.